Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, Jackie Kashian here. You're listening to the Dork Forest. You know the websites, dorkforest.com, thedorkforest.com if you like a determiner. JackieKashian.com has everything. Both of my podcasts, all of the stand-up stuff, the new album, links to YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. But so, I think, does dorkforest.com, where you can look at old videos of different shows. Anyway, if you want to support the show, tell people about the show, review it on iTunes, thumbs it up on Pandora or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I appreciate that. You can donate. You can donate monthly. PayPal lets you do that. You can also do my Venmo if you like. It's at Jackie Kashian, absolutely everywhere. And my email address is jackie@jackiekashian.com, and that's what the PayPal is. The PayPal link is on jackiekashian.com and dorkforest.com. And go to any of them. Thanks for listening. There's merch. There's stand-up, there's tour guide, you can find out where I'm touring. This is getting long, so let's get into the show. Hey, Jackie Kashian here in my living room. The interaction with this young man, when he said, "Hey, I'm a dork about hunting," and I said, "Not man, I hope." And he was like, "No," and so it was actually funnier. But hey, we're going to do a Dork Forest about hunting and about, I assume, the cleaning and cooking is what you were saying, because you were telling me about your wife on in the exchange. Guys, why don't I actually introduce him? It's David LaMere. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Jackie. I appreciate being here.
That's awesome. And you have a podcast about hunting called The Wild Huntsman. And if you go to @The Wild Huntsman podcast on Instagram, you will find many, many options and the ability to listen to podcasts where you listen to podcasts. It's The Wild Huntsman. David, we don't know each other.
Nope.
I don't come from hunting people, sadly. Somebody once brought meat over when I was little. I remember that. They brought over some venison, and my mother could not have been more confused. Because now it's all cool, right? Everybody knows how to eat venison now.
Yes.
But it turns out a factory town in Wisconsin in the 70s, a lot of processed food going on. So the neighbors who thought they were being very nice were actually just confusing my overworked mother. So what state do you live in?
I live in upstate New York. I'm up in, just south of the Adirondacks.
Okay, that's neat. Then, because that's wild country. That's country where you can go hunting and fishing and all the things.
It is. There's about 2 million acres of public land open to hunting, accessible to hunting right nearby. That's
cool. Now, do you hunt all year long, or is it seasonal?
It's seasonal. So each state, under the North American model of wildlife conservation, each state makes their own guidelines for seasons for what you can hunt at what time, all sort of under an idea of when the best times are hunting, and scientifically, and what's best for the species and for folks.
Okay. I remember asking my dad when I was little to teach me how to trap, because he used to have a trap line when he was little, when it wasn't a factory town, when it was just a tiny town in Wisconsin. He had a rabbit snares.
Snares, yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, "Well, you can't do it in the summer. They got worms. We can't eat them." And I was like, "All right." Well, so then he was hoping I would forget by winter. And I did not forget, and a horrible thing happened. We caught a rabbit. Anyway, and it was a devastation. Yes. So I'm not the hero of that story, so I'm not going to be ending it here, because I want you to like me first. So
there's a good way to get introduced to hunting, trapping, fishing, and some not so good ways to be introduced.
Yeah. Right? That it does make sense. Like, I have friends from high school whose dads would take them out deer hunting in Wisconsin. And some of them it took, and some of them were like, this was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And the ones that were a nightmare seemed to involve about a case of beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
bad.
it's you're carrying weapons into the forest.
It's frowned upon, generally speaking. I luckily haven't.
How
In
did you
my,
learn? How did you learn to hunt?
I learned. I had the country cousins sort of thing. I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, and visiting my grandmother at my aunt and uncle's place in Vermont, I was
Okay.
introduced first to um, rifle shooting and then eventually to hunting. And it was a very good sort of a way for a young person to get involved, because we didn't we weren't successful very much in our hunting, but
R-
the basics were hammered in very successfully about firearm safety and respect for the resource and the animal.
Oh, that's cool because and that makes sense. So, how old were you? Like you were like 10 or 11 going to your grandma's house?
Yeah, exactly right. Right in those probably between 9 and 13, I'd be going there.
That's the sweet spot in all the good
Mhm.
movies.
Yeah,
So, for when a
sure,
young man gets a gun, and
sure.
so were your uncles and were they all? I mean, obviously, your cousin's parents were doing some hunting.
Yeah.
Were they also cooking? And
Yes. Yeah. It's
so you grew
sort
up
of
on the meat too. So it
a little
wasn't
bit.
shocking. Okay.
A little bit, and it was also a farm area, so there was that level of understanding animals and processing and that sort of connectedness to your food source as something from outside the supermarket, not mass produced.
Right, right. What was it? Was it like a dairy farm or was it a growing farm? Did it have
It
plant?
was a hobby farm. It was my uncle had retired. I was the youngest cousin
Hmm.
by probably 15 years. So
Okay.
he was an older gentleman, and he had retired and started his farm that he always wanted to do, and it didn't need to produce anything,
Right.
but it
So
did sometimes.
right, right. So he had like a vegetable garden and he might have had some animals and stuff
Exactly right.
and then he
And
was right on
horses.
and horses. Oh, that's
Yes.
cool too.
Yeah,
You know,
they were terrible, terrible
my
animals.
my my husband his cousins were all in Mississippi, rural Mississippi.
Yeah,
And so every summer he would go to rural Mississippi.
yeah.
And his dad he worked for United until he retired. And he got an early retire, like he got a disability retirement when he was in his 40s. And
Mm,
so he made up a job, which was he trained bird dogs for field trials.
yes,
And so he trained mostly pointers who
yes,
hunted birds, right?
yes, yeah,
And Andy would tell me that one of his jobs with his dad's horses was that after school, he had to ride the horses
yeah,
and essentially make them do everything they didn't want to do.
yeah. That was my job as well as a boy. Being the light person, figuring, and it's all relative. I was a pretty hefty kid,
Mhm.
but putting me on a horse and saying, it's not broke. This horse isn't going to listen to you. We're just going to acclimatize it, and you need to stay on.
Okay. We're just
So
trying to teach him that different people are going to be riding him.
different people are going to ride it, and the horse didn't like being ridden, and
And
it
thus,
was
you didn't like riding it. Uh,
it got tense and uncertain. And I had a hard time with an animal that would really lose its mind over like a plastic bag flying by, something
oh, it was
something that would
twitchy.
startle it.
No, twitchy horse.
Yeah, yeah,
All right. Well, and so okay, so you learned how to. So the first initially it was just learn how to fire the rifles,
yeah. Firearm safety stuff and marksmanship.
marksmanship. Make sure you know which side and how to treat it and to be.
Yeah,
I once had a gun dork on. It was actually a
yeah,
very spooky episode because
yeah.
my buddy Robert Jenkins was sitting in the dark in the
Mm,
basement with his variety of guns
mm,
because his wife was upstairs. And I was like,
yeah,
you got to get a ring light or something, Robert, because you're looking ominous.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he was the previous episode that I've had about anything even close to this. It was entirely about gun safety.
Well, we
So
love those. We love the gun dorks in certainly in hunting, but also just generally speaking, the Pittman Robertson Act.
Now,
This
what
is
is
getting
that?
real dorky.
Yeah, let's
Is
do it.
1937 Act
Okay.
that in the late 19th, early 20th century, a bunch of folks got together and realized that they were killing all of the animals in North America. Remember the
Right.
buffalo and the passenger
Right.
pigeon and, all of our cautionary tales.
Yep.
And white-tailed deer were at a remarkably low number. They'd be an endangered species if they were at the number they were at
Oh my
back
gosh.
then today. So
Okay.
they decided we got to fix this, and they applied a tax. It's about an 11%, might be 11%, could be 10. It's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Tax on ammunition and firearms and things that are used for hunting. But so that money is used for expanding wild places and recovering animals. It's actually the most successful monetary way that we have helped wildlife in North America is through that one act.
Okay, so that's what they use for conservation and to
They use it for
repopulate.
conservation.
Okay.
Exactly. And now, as you know, with all of many of those animals, certainly the game animals, have come back to remarkable numbers, sometimes problematic numbers in areas.
Oh, Northern California has a deer problem and
Yeah.
a bleeding heart problem. As much as my heart bleeds as well,
Sure.
but you gotta cull the herd.
Yes.
So it is. We are recording this in March, the middle of March of
Yep.
2022.
Yep.
What is in season in upstate New York?
So in season in upstate New York would be snowshoe hare is
Oh.
the last thing that I would hunt that's in season. There's some animals that are not considered game species that you can do year round. Squirrel, red squirrel, pine squirrel, you can do year round. And I'll
Okay.
train my dog on those animals most of the time. But I'm not interested in hunting pine squirrels generally. So
Right. Well, that's you might as
I
well.
will hunt squirrel, Jackie. I'll hunt
You'll
gray squirrel.
you'll hunt a gray squirrel.
Not
It's
about squirrel
Are,
hunting.
are you? Is it hunting? Here's
Yeah.
the thing about the definition of the word
Sure.
hunting.
Sure.
Is there a tracking going on? Is there some sort of planning? Gray
Sure.
squirrels? That feels like opportunity and motive.
No, yeah, it sounds like just a person with a problem just out there. No, the weird thing about some of the animals that we have in abundance in our home areas, animals that live really well up against civilization, humanity, particularly suburbia.
Yeah.
White-tailed deer, gray squirrel, Canada goose.
Right.
These are animals that in the wild run away from you, have no interest in being around you.
Right.
So I could go hunting Canada geese and drive through the suburbs, pass by tons of Canada geese, get out and have a day where I don't have any success. And the same with squirrel or deer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you sometimes have to destination go hunting so
Yeah.
that you're not just literally just clearing out the local park.
Right.
Yeah. And it's probably not legal to shoot, to
Nope.
hunt in a local park, right? You have to
Nope.
go to a designated sort of where everyone knows there will be hunters.
There are places that are multiple use that allow hunting and recreation, and particularly with the pandemic, it was an interesting push of folks who were going stir crazy in their homes, getting into wild places. So I'd be out hunting and see folks that I would never have seen before. But generally speaking, I like to go as far back in as possible off of trails and away
Oh, so you
from.
park and then you sort of
Yes.
hike in?
Yeah.
Do you end up
Yeah.
camping and stuff too? Do you stay overnight inside?
Sure, I've done that. That's a wonderful way to do it. If I can make the time, I'll do that, and that's great. I got up just before the pandemic. I got out into Nevada, into the Ruby Mountains and the
Oh,
Ruby Mountain Wilderness, and it was wonderful.
Where is that? That sounds pretty.
Yeah, it's in Nevada. It was it's
That's where
different.
Las Vegas is. Hi, I do
It's in
stand-up
northern
comedy.
Nevada.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm like Laughlin?
Sure.
I only know where the casino towns are because that's where they
Sure,
do stand.
Reno.
Sure.
Las Vegas, sure.
Reno is right by Tahoe, and that is actually
course.
very beautiful and
Oh, yeah.
further north.
Oh yeah.
So is it north of Reno as well, the Ruby
No,
Mountains?
it's south of Reno. It's probably right in the middle of nowhere, in
Oh,
between. If you were
right.
to look at Vegas and Reno, you'd go in the middle.
Okay, so so you yeah, let's backtrack a little bit because I want to know. So when you went hunting initially and you weren't particularly successful at it, you just sort of
Hmm.
got the safety and you got the camaraderie and you got to hang
Yes,
out with your family and it was super fun.
with adults, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, you know, six dads and and a bunch of cousins. And so
Sure.
um what was this is I don't want it to be gross, but I mean
No.
like what was the first animal that you successfully hunted and
Hmm.
how do you process that, you know?
You're right. Sure. So the first animal I successfully hunted was a cottontail rabbit.
Okay,
So, regular bunny rabbit type
a
of.
bunny rabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like you would have probably been setting snares for.
that I set snares for and that
Yes.
I sadly killed.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how did you process it?
Uh,
My father got too busy to help me. Anyway,
okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. That is the
yeah,
wrong way to go about it.
it completely entirely the wrong way and sad for the bunny rabbit. Anyway,
Yes. Yeah.
continuing.
I did. I'm probably close to your age. I think we're probably of a similar age. So this was before YouTube,
Right.
but I did take that rabbit by myself and did clean it by myself. I just went by books, and
Okay.
books are kind of the
So you wait.
podcast. Oh, please.
So are you in rural? You're at your uncle's house and you're like, I have shot this rabbit.
Yeah.
This is now my rabbit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna figure out how to clean it
Correct.
and skin it and figure
Correct.
it out. Yeah,
Correct.
you know, I loved books when I was 11 and I caught that rabbit. You would have thought that I would have gone to the damn library and got a book. Okay, so
Right.
did the
Right.
book help?
The book was very helpful. The book walked me through it, and luckily, rabbits are one of the easiest animals to clean.
Okay,
They're
they're
almost self-explanatory once you get into it.
right. They're kind of simple. And
Yep.
then did you end up in a very sort of Gollum, Sam and Frodo kind of way, clean up a brace of conies and make stew? Did you end up eating that rabbit?
I did eat that rabbit, and I want to say it was a breaded rabbit medallion was the first one, pan-fried.
Okay,
It's
so
a
you went
white
with
meat. It's very similar to any other white meat, and it was
a little
good.
dry,
It
but it
was
was pretty
good.
good. All
It
right,
was good.
yeah. And so you did a little panko, little
Yeah.
breading, and then pan fried it. Good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And so so that's so you tend to. Do you also bird hunt?
I do. I'm a generalist, so I'm not great at anything. I'm not a hunting expert on any stretch. I get to talk to hunting experts. That's why I do the podcast, is I talk to mostly, it seems, about hunting writers I'll talk to.
Oh,
And
like
and that
magazine writers?
a
They'll
lot of
write
magazine
articles?
writers, a lot of book writers, folks that have thought deeply about hunting.
Okay.
And it's a scam, Jackie, is what it is. I
Is
couldn't,
it?
I couldn't just call these people up and say, I want to talk to you about your ideas that you really delved into deeply in this book. You know what? That person's not calling me back. I'm just a
Right.
creep.
Yeah.
So, but I invite them on the podcast, and
You
let
get a
them.
podcast, all of a sudden you get to talk to all kinds of people.
Exactly.
As I sit here, excited to learn. And so, yeah, you know, there was about a month ago, I did an episode about fly fishing with my brother. And so he recommended a lot of great books
Yeah.
about if you wanted to get into fly fishing.
Yeah.
So you have, so there's equipment
Yep. A lot of it.
and a lot of equipment. That's its own hobby, right?
Mhm. Oh, yes.
Collecting a variety of kind of weapons.
Gear.
Do you mostly do like shotguns and guns, or do you do any
Mhm.
crossbowy kind of stuff or bows and arrows?
Sure. I always frowned on crossbows because when I was younger, I was a little bit better at judging people and thinking like saying that's not really whatever. Fill in the blank.
Right.
But I
You're
had
not doing that
kids.
right. Yep.
Right. Exactly. They're not doing the real thing. They're not really doing it. But having kids really helped me to get past that. So teaching them archery is
Hmm.
important to me, and they enjoy it, but they're not going to be able to. My young daughter isn't going to be able to pull back a bow with the power it would take to effectively and ethically kill an animal. Where a
Okay.
crossbow is similar but easier to shoot, so it'll have all the power with the learning curve and the physical strength necessary is lessened.
Okay, because a crossbow is actually kind of mechanical, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it has enough force to actually it
Mhm.
could kill the deer instead of
Yes.
you having to find the deer that you just wounded.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's I remember a lot of talk in junior high and grade school
Yeah.
right after hunting season started where they're like, well, we spent the whole weekend
Yeah. Yeah.
following this deer.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
learn to shoot better. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's important to do it ethically, right? If you're going to do it, you have to take it seriously.
right. Everything I know about hunting, sadly, either comes from those experiences in my grade school and junior high
Yeah.
and some Louis L'Amour novels.
Okay. Good.
So
Good source.
he writes a good novel. It's always a lone guy coming into town to help.
Sure.
So
How about Zane Grey?
I never, Zane Grey. I tried to read Zane Grey, but I liked Louis L'Amour writes people better. Zane
Yeah.
Grey writes scenery better.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So did you read Zane Grey?
Not so much. I didn't enjoy his work so much, but he was a big hunter and fisherman. So
Okay. Yeah.
so
No,
he held records and such and big
did,
fish records.
fishing records, like
Yeah.
size of fish.
Size of fish.
Are there hunting contests?
So there are super problematic as you can imagine, right? Hunting is politically um, fraught,
Charged?
charged, fraught,
Fraught with
and
peril? Yes.
right, and as it should be something that people think about and consider, and not everyone's going to be a hunter, and so hunters have to do a better job of reaching out to non-hunters, giving them food if it's not a burden like it was to your mom. Is a
Right.
good
No,
way of doing
right.
it.
Find out if they eat meat, and then they
Yes,
might want to try to cook venison. And
exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Called venison diplomacy in my
right,
circles, but a gift can be a burden if it's not
right. It's
wanted.
like giving somebody a puppy. You think about
Yes,
it for a
yeah.
second. Yeah.
Give it some thought. But yeah, I don't know what I was saying, Jack.
You were
I got
saying
lost.
about hunting contests.
Oh, hunting contests. Yeah. So there are record books. Boone and Crockett is a famous one. Pope and Young is another famous one. I think Boone and Crockett might have been started by Teddy Roosevelt
Okay.
and friends, and that's just my memory of it. But they'll do a point scoring system on antler size and that sort of thing.
Right. Right,
So
right.
people will talk about points and that, and even within the hunting community, um, that's not across the board.
Right. That's I would think there's different kinds of hunters. I mean, you sound like a
There are.
guy who wants to go hunt and
Yeah.
then bring that kill home,
Yeah.
make your wife uncomfortable,
Yes.
and then and then provide a delicious meal for your
Yes.
family.
I have since the beginning. Exactly right. So there's I think some of the controversy in hunting within the hunting community would be the pictures that people take, grip and grin photos. They have a dead animal, they're holding antlers, they got a big smile.
Ooh, grip
That's
and
a
grin. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a controversial subject for both sides because everyone wants a picture of grandpa on the farm
Yep.
when he's been hunting. But there it can be done incorrectly, it can be done disrespectfully to the animal, and it's
Yeah. How,
so
how about just at the dinner table?
there you are. There you are. So a lot of folks, particularly now, there's a big wild meat contingent of hunters who hunt primarily for food, a hunt to eat sort of. That's an actual
Get back
company,
to the
hunt to eat.
land or hunt to
Yeah,
eat.
Yeah, there's a bunch of folks who do it primarily as a way of participating in nature as opposed to viewing nature, going for a walk, and it's an object, subject, object, that's nature, and this is me, and I'll look at it.
Right.
And the hunters oftentimes think of themselves as participating in the natural cycle and
Hmm.
in nature. They're not separate. There's not that creepiness where the deer is a thing as
Right.
much that we look at and say it's beautiful and then go home.
I got to kill that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's weird. Nobody's
Yeah.
doing that. No, yeah. hopefully they're like, that's really good looking. I got to end that. And no, it's
Hopefully not. Yeah,
hopefully
I'm sure there's different types of
there are different types of humans out in the
people.
world.
Exactly.
They're
Yeah.
not coming on the Dork Forest. It creeps me
Yeah.
out.
Thank you.
So yeah. I believe in you, David LaMere,
So,
who, by the
thank
way,
you.
has a podcast called The Wild Huntsman, and it's the Wild Huntsman podcast on Instagram. So just so you know.
Jackie,
yeah.
can I tell you about that time I creeped out my wife?
Yes, please. Oh my gosh, please tell me.
All right. So one of the ways to not introduce someone to hunting, I participated in and was the problematic figure.
Instigator.
I was the
Oh,
instigator. I was the foolish person. So as a young man, my wife is an impressive individual. She's a scholar artist. You know, she's a theater professor. She's
oh wow.
cultured.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's cultured and
She's a classy
erudite.
lady. She's a classy
She is
classy lady.
absolutely a classy lady. I'm I'm a big dumb animal. And when wooing my wife,
You guys are like a romance novel, by the way.
Right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I know you appreciate those from my listening.
I don't mind them.
All right. So when pitching woo toward my wife, I mentioned that I hunted. But it never came up after that. I was telling her how wonderful I thought she was.
Right.
And would you marry me?
Right.
I wasn't saying, I knew who I was dealing with. I wasn't saying, hey, come out into the woods at dark 30. We're going to freeze our butts off and really challenge ourselves. And if we're lucky, we'll end up with 100 pounds of meat. It didn't seem reasonable to me.
Right. It didn't come up in conversation.
It didn't come up during the romance, during the,
How long did you date before?
Long time.
Right. So she didn't know. How often do you go hunting?
All the time. So during hunting season, I would say, I'm going hunting. And she would say, great. And I would go hunting, and I wouldn't talk about it. I didn't bring it up really afterwards. I had other things on my mind, Jackie. I was interested in winning the love of this woman.
You thought, I don't want to creep her out with the hunting. So
it didn't even occur to me to creep out. It wasn't that. I wasn't hiding it.
You weren't hiding it. Okay.
I wasn't hiding it.
Good to hear.
I was merely, I had other things on my mind. So when we were married, hunting season came along. In the beginning in September, early game seasons are normally small game season. I went out squirrel hunting. I was successful. I came back. I was cooking up squirrel. My wife was teaching a class and came back, and she came into the home. She said, it smells wonderful. What are you cooking? And I said, teriyaki squirrel. And she screamed and ran out of the house. And I was left alone with my squirrel and my dinner.
Not a euphemism. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, Jesse. And I looked around, and she came back into the house giving me the universal sign, don't talk to me. Went into the bedroom and called her sister. I heard from the bedroom, I married a man who eats squirrels. I heard my sister-in-law screaming, what? He eats what? It was just terrible. It was a terrible situation.
It's unfortunate that the first triumphant hunt was a squirrel. She would have been, if you had brought home pheasant, if you had brought home, it would have been exotic. If you had brought home deer, she might have been grossed up, but like, oh, well, he goes deer hunting. All right.
It's a big game animal.
Right. Where did she grow up?
She grew up in New England as well, but
Okay.
she's a first generation child of immigrants from Cape Verde and West Africa. So
Okay.
they weren't hunting folks. They were city, hardworking.
They were city folk.
They were
She was not a country mouse. She was a
was
city
not a
mouse.
country mouse. She was not interested in my
In your
country
squirrel
ways,
talk.
and that ruined it for a little while. I did.
How did you repair her perception of your? What did she try the squirrel?
No, of course, no.
Oh no, there
I
was no
was
eating of the
happy. I
squirrel.
was happy to come out with our marriage still intact.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did-
yeah.
I
You were
did
like,
not-
I do not insist that you try teriyaki squirrel at this time.
I
Yes.
said that I would clean and process animals outside of her view in
Outside
the
of
future, and that there'd be no animal parts to terrify her. So
just
we over the years, I would bring in ducks, type of duck meat, and say, try this, and a little bit here, a little bit there, and then
how
as
long
of
have you
this,
been together, if I might ask?
it'll be, let's see, 1994 we were married.
Okay.
So
Oh wow. So quite
Yeah.
some time. Congratulations.
thank you.
So we're almost 30 years later, 28 years later,
Yes.
and and so now you're bringing in ducks. Okay.
I'm bringing in other animals. My son, I think sort of a high point of her acceptance was my son bringing home a turkey this past year and everyone cheering him as opposed to screaming and running out of the room.
Right. I think it does help when it's your kid going,
Yes.
oh, you're so proud of yourself. Of course I'll try this
Right.
turkey.
Right. Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to him for getting a turkey.
Yeah. You did
yeah.
good.
So when you hunt, do you bring it back in the car? Like, is it just you have plastic in the trunk and you just make sure everything's, or do you have coolers? Maybe you have some sort of
It's
igloo.
been a combination. It's been
Okay.
many years. It was a pickup truck scenario with
Okay.
tarps.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, or a cap over the pickup truck bed was for several years. I am purchasing in the near future a station wagon, and that is a big concern of mine that I'll be putting dead animals in the back of the station wagon.
Yeah, because it might get a little. It's hard to air out a station wagon. Now, is it a real station wagon? I didn't think they were making them anymore. I thought they were calling them CrossFit or
Yes,
Cross
well,
something.
yeah, I'm going to buy a little bit older station wagon, and I think Volvo and Subaru still make them.
Still making a station wagon.
Yeah.
All right. It's so. Have you ever dressed the meat where it lay? Like, have you ever just sort of cleaned it in the moment?
Yeah. So maybe not. I haven't done the full processing, but certainly for large animals that you kill in the backcountry.
Yeah. But then you have to hike out, right?
Then you have to hike out. So there's, depending on the laws of the state that you're hunting in, sometimes you have to keep an animal intact with the tag on it throughout the process and then check it in sometimes at a check station.
Oh.
But in some states, you're allowed to quarter the animal in the field. If it's
Okay.
a large animal.
Right. Because, like, if how big is a white-tailed deer that you've?
Yeah. So a real big one up here is probably 175 pounds or so.
Yeah. No, and you already have 50 pounds worth of gear.
Yeah, tough
Yeah.
drag. And I'm not getting younger and
Right. Right. You're like, is there a way that I could leave
yes.
some of this for the local wildlife and then I take out the meat?
Yes.
Yeah.
And for the larger animals out west, like an elk is very popular now for hunters, and particularly for hunters who are of the newer style where fitness is a lifestyle that goes with it. There's people training with specific programs for elk season.
So that they can get in and get out with their elk and
Yes.
pull it on like some
Yes.
sort of, like, are they
Yes.
weaving? I picture them. There's a lot of dog and horse books in my past.
Okay.
And so,
Good.
and people are making like sort of trap, like those things that you like, and then you
Yeah.
you just drag it. Yeah.
You're right.
I
Yeah,
bet you
nobody,
REI sells something that you wouldn't have to
I've
build
never
that.
seen that happen, but there are modern equivalents
Yeah.
that people are dragging animals out on.
Do you have favorite equipment?
Favorite equipment. I am old, Jackie, as we've discussed. So,
As has been established, you are
as
not
has been established earlier. So, I am at the point in my life where I'm simplifying more and more and getting from buying the latest and greatest to finding stuff that just works. So,
right.
uh,
Right. It's sort of like buying in wardrobe, you buy sort of base pieces. You have a black
absolutely.
turtleneck, you can wear that anywhere. That dresses
Absolutely.
up, that dresses down.
Yeah.
And so is there because when you like if you travel, you have to
Yes.
pack you have
Yeah.
to pack the weapons
Yeah.
in your check-in, right? I don't think you could
Yeah.
do carry-on, right? I mean, that would
Yeah.
be frowned on.
You can't go on the carrier.
No, right? So there's the case, and then
Yep.
in which is usually soft, but
Yeah.
there should be some sort of brace or something because you don't want the gun to break.
Right. So there are good travel cases that are made of either plastic or aluminum that protect your gear while you travel.
Okay. Yeah. And do you do any fishing?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
I'm a fly fisherman by through most of my life, but hook and bobber and worms when I had kids.
Oh, right. Right, because it's just easier.
It's
Because
try to teach a 4-year-old to fly
yeah,
fish. Challenging.
right. They can sit next to you and play with the bobber and the worm,
Yes.
and they might catch something. So,
Yeah.
do you tie your own flies as well?
I did. I'm
For a while.
starting back up again now that my kids don't need me to point them anymore into the directions and do all the guiding.
Okay, yeah, that's and it's a nice thing to do is to sit and watch TV or listen to the radio or something and
Yes.
tie flies. That's what my brother
Yes.
says anyway.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
what are equipment that you would like if someone, and it's a weird thing to say, but I always say it, so why wouldn't I say it with hunting? If
Sure.
someone wanted to get into hunting
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
how would you suggest that what would be starter stuff?
Take an online or in-person hunter education course.
Step one is give
Step
yourself an
one.
hour or two of
Yeah,
of hunter safety stuff.
exactly.
Okay.
It's normally run by the state, or at least licensed by the state and the Department of Environmental Conservation or Fish and Game or whatever state you're in. They have different names for it, but
right.
you take a course and that'll give you sort of a head start on all of the safety aspects of it.
Right. It just sort of gives you a sane introduction. They're like,
Yeah.
you want to do this?
Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah.
We have a lot of deer.
Yeah.
We have a lot of grouse.
Yes.
And
Yes, we do.
but so if you take that first safety thing, and then the next thing would be obviously some sort of weapon safety, whatever kind of weapon you're using.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's all part of that training. So if you take a general hunter safety course, if you do an in-person course in particular, they'll do a day of weapons safety, and they'll normally bring you through a rifle and a shotgun. There's an archery specific course, and they'll do that as well. But there's also a bunch of online resources for mentorship, and it's important. It's a steep learning curve to teach yourself.
Yeah.
And we're at a point now where so many folks, based on the people who are deliberate about their food choices,
Mhm.
getting into hunting. And so that what that means is that a lot of adults, young adults in particular, seem to be taking up hunting now.
Mhm.
And if they can find a mentor, there's a bunch of programs. If there's one in their area, sign up.
What a great idea. I mean, the thing is some of the best things I've ever taken part in has
Yeah.
been either a formal or informal mentorship where, I mean, you had a very informal, just it was family, right?
Of course. Of course.
But if you don't have that upbringing and that isn't been integral to your social circle,
Yeah.
finding someone who can because otherwise you're just sort of floundering and reading books and watching YouTube videos, which is doable, but it's also camaraderie.
And it's difficult, right, to put yourself out there and say, I could use your help. I'd like your information.
It's super.
It's difficult for someone like me, who's a boring middle-aged white guy. If you're not that, if you're different race, ethnicity, gender, whatever,
and more exciting,
however you define yourself, right? But a lot of folks won't feel comfortable doing that. In that they don't want to be the only person that looks like them in a room of folks that look like me.
Right.
Which is completely understandable, reasonable, sensible. So there are online resources for that as well. There's groups for women hunters, Hunters of Colors is a group, Minority Outdoor Alliance is a group.
Oh, right. So that you can at least I have several friends who are people of color who are like, if I'm the only Black person you're inviting to your party, please don't invite me. It's exhausting.
Right.
And so I was like, oh no, of course. And allow me to get more friends. Allow me to expand my acquaintanceship to all different kinds of people. And so that's an excellent point too, because I'm sure with mentorship and with those communities, with those groups that are, Outdoor Alliance or whatever, they create a sense of community. And what you were saying before about learning about how to use the resources and leave you have to sort of be wise about not overfishing or over hunting anything, right?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of it's fraught with ethical challenges, and it's a wonderful pastime, but the bar to entry looks high to a lot of people.
It really does, because it seems, I've had several friends, and this is of course tangential, but the several friends have told me that I should get a gun in the last couple of years, but they're talking about judge, jury, and executioner kind of gun.
Personal defense.
I have no need. I would shoot. I have no motor skills, so the first thing that would happen would be something horrible. It would probably be the last thing that happened, where I would trip, fall, and eat a gun. So and then, but there's it's intimidating to think about guns at all, and weapons, quite honestly, just because they are lethal.
Of course.
Which is why that safety. I took a safety archery class. And that was it was a relief.
Of course.
Because with when I was taught the correct way to use and hold and point and do this thing, it felt less lethal and more like they say oftentimes a tool. And something where it kind of took the terror out of it. I was just like, okay. I found a knife on the ground once. It's a really cool knife, but it's like it's a carpenter knife, right? So it's got a nice little saw thing on it, and but it's also but we're all taught not to run with scissors. I mean, you just it's scary until you know what you're doing, I think.
I think so. And I think that there's so many groups out there that can help you, that it would be, if you're hoping to start, it would be silly not to take advantage. These groups really, they're putting in the time because they want to do that. They want to mentor folks. And there's different groups that, I don't know, I'm in a bunch of them, but if you're a waterfowl hunter, there's groups like Delta Waterfowl or Ducks Unlimited, which their job is to advocate for that resource, for that species of animal. But on top of that, when you sign up for that, you go to some dinner, fundraising dinner, and you'll meet 30 folks, 50 folks who are interested in duck hunting. So,
you can talk about duck hunting to other people who are really into duck hunting.
And don't talk about it if people aren't into duck hunting. Don't go and just start talking about it.
Which is why your wife didn't know. And you're like, I have found that not a lot of people want to have this conversation. Me and my enjoyment of hunting of squirrel, and but if you went to Squirrel Hunters Unlimited,
Exactly, sure.
there'd be at least 13 other people who were like, no, tell me what you do. How do you?
Right.
Because do you? Here's this might even be Nathaniel Hawthorne. I forget where you bark a squirrel.
Yeah.
It's you try to kill it with the bark off a tree or something. That's fictional, right? Is that real? I don't know.
That's actually real.
Oh, that's real.
That's real. No, I don't do it or haven't done it, but it's an old timey idea, musket era. Daniel Boone, certainly.
Right. Because possibly because the bullets were so large.
Yeah, exactly.
There would be no squirrel left.
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah, you don't. That's a tenet. You don't want to waste the meat.
Yes, and if you're using a tinier gun,
yes,
and you can get them right in the brain box,
yep,
then you got all the squirrel that you've ever wanted.
Yes.
Is a squirrel much more than one meal for one person?
No, it's not. It's exactly what you think it is for the amount of meat on its body.
A fair amount of work.
I've been told by several folks that it's the best game meat out there.
Oh, all right.
Does
it taste specifically like squirrel?
It's another white meat, but it is good. It's harder to dry out, I think, than most white meat.
Okay.
No?
Well, now we know.
Well, let me ask you, you're a comedian. If you go to a gathering, you can't talk to anybody. If you found somebody that was another comedian, you'd be talking to that person in the room, right? Oh,
let me tell you about a social experience my husband and I had for the first several years of our lives, and still occurs. We invite people over for, let's say, a barbecue.
Sure.
Pre-pandemic, obviously. Sure. There might be 30 people in our backyard. There might be 20, right? Whatever it is. Let's say 10 of them are comics and 10 of them are video game designers. Okay. They break up into those two very specific groups.
Yes.
And we try to blend them together. At the wedding, we sat them all mixed up. Well, as soon as they stood up, they kind of gravitated anyway. Because all he wants to talk about are games. And most of his friends games. And all I want to talk about is stand-up, and most of my friends stand-up. Yeah. But we have, there's social skills. We could all, I don't have to bring it up.
Of course.
He doesn't have to bring it up.
Sure.
But it's just like hunting.
You can pretend. But
you can pretend that it's not the opportunity. Right. So you're members of several groups.
Yes.
Does your wife come to you to any of these dinners, or you're just like,
No, I'm a good husband, and I don't put her in the position. If you go to a Ducks Unlimited dinner, which I've been to a few, and they're nice.
Sure.
There's going to be people dressed in camouflage. There's going to be people with ties, but they have ducks on them. And
my brother has ties that have trout on them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I have a tie with ducks on them. I don't wear it around her. But no, I don't. And she doesn't. She's very cautious with what musical theater she has me attend. She's kind, she's kind and generous, and I'm trying to be the same.
Right, and she can find someone else to go to a musical theater event.
She can find someone else. I can find someone else to go to the Ducks Unlimited.
Right, it's just a social event. Yep. And it's really for the best.
Yeah.
Hard agree.
Yeah.
It's one of Andy said it was one of his favorite things is when we went to a party together and he didn't have to sort of follow me around to make sure I was all right. I have enough social skills that I could just talk to people.
Sure.
And it took a while, but I'm in my twilight years. You would think I would get it together at this late date. Do you have favorite places? That was one of my questions.
Favorite places
to go hunting. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm a person who likes a marsh, Jackie. If you can give me a marsh,
a wetland,
a marsh.
Are there marshes by you?
There are marshes. There's up here in the Adirondacks. They protected a lot of the land in a forever wild designation, so nothing happens there, and that they don't cut any trees. Didn't use any of the resources, and it gets a little bit forest primeval when you get up north.
A little tight.
Yeah, a little tight. So because because of the makeup of the trees and the soil, it's more boggy here. But if I get closer to the coast, it's more marsh.
Okay. And that's good for bird hunting or all of
Yeah,
it?
it's most animals will use a marsh, but certainly for duck hunting. And that's my like. I don't know if you probably do have a happy place if you're sitting in the dentist chair and the Novocaine's starting to wear off, and
Yeah.
you
You got to
think
go somewhere.
I
Yeah.
have to go somewhere mentally, I'll go to duck hunting in a marsh on the Massachusetts coast
Very nice.
from my youth.
Yes, I'll go to the quarry in Wisconsin with Little Rawson Woods. It's
Yeah.
not it's not there's a very nice the Grant Park is a very wooded large park on the coast of Milwaukee, of South
Yeah.
Milwaukee,
Yeah.
the small town that I grew up in. And it's big. It's got to go.
Yeah.
It's got to be 2 or 3 miles long, and it's just all the coastline of Lake Michigan, and then
Wow.
in about a mile and a half, I would say.
Wow.
Maybe. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's really nice.
Yeah.
And I think there's hunting, but it might just be bow hunting. Like you might
Sure.
have to go to northern Wisconsin if you
Yeah.
wanted to do rifle hunting.
Yeah.
There was something. Oh, I was going to ask you if you would the idea of all the animals use the marsh. It reminded me. I don't know if you've ever been to Los Angeles, but if you ever come,
No.
the La Brea Tar Pits are not just a Bugs Bunny thing.
Yeah.
They are real. I did not know. They are on like La Brea and Wilshire. There's a
Yes.
museum, and
Yes.
surrounding the museum, by the way, one of the greatest deals in the world. First of all, it's $11.
All
I
right.
think it costs more to park.
All
It
right.
might cost $20 to park and then $11 a ticket. It is approximately a 45-minute museum. One of
Okay.
my favorite
Yeah.
kind of museum.
Yeah.
Gift shop, adorable. Anyway, a lot of mastodons, but they
Yes.
have mastodons and saber-toothed tigers because that's what they found in
Yeah.
those tar pits back in the
Yeah.
early 1900s.
Yeah.
And the tar pits are still there, obviously,
Of course.
because it's tar.
Right.
And you can go see
Wow.
and sort of like, it's hot, so you don't
Yeah.
want to really poke it, but I mean,
Sure.
you can see it bubble.
Yeah.
And it's, you ever come to Los Angeles, I swear to
All
God,
right.
it
I'm
is
doing it.
it's a 2.5 hour, very beautiful, and then there's restaurants walking distance. And
Let
so
me
I
ask you,
recommend it.
Jackie, how do they get those animals out of the tar?
I
Any
don't
idea?
know. A
I
tractor?
don't know either.
Tractor? I think they were asked. Here's how it happened initially, and and I only know this because of the museum.
Yep.
So they were excavating because they were going to build stuff,
Okay.
and so they started digging up the tar and trying to, figure out a way to
Oh,
make
yeah.
foundations
Okay.
and stuff.
Right. Right.
And all of a sudden, saber-toothed tiger or dire wolf or mastodon.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
and now they've x-rayed everything.
Yeah.
And so now they're just doing sort of tiny bits of bone or what they're
Okay.
finding.
Yeah.
And you're
yeah.
like, well, that is not exciting. I would like to see a giant tooth, please.
That's no
And
sloth.
yeah, it's less exciting. Yeah, they found sloth too. And but yeah, so that's one of your favorite places. Do you still go to the coast of Massachusetts and
Sure.
go hunting?
Yeah, I still have family there, and I hope to
Oh,
be
nice.
hunting this season out with my son in the Rhode Island, Massachusetts area with the coastal marshes and introducing him to what I grew up doing. It's great stuff. It's a
Yeah,
little bit of
yeah.
nature in a very populated place.
Right. It isn't Cape Cod, is it?
I've hunted Cape Cod quite a bit.
Oh.
Love it. Love it.
Oh, that's neat.
Wow.
I
yeah.
lived three summers in Provincetown, which
Yes.
was literally just alcoholism, but that's fine. And over now.
You engaged in the culture.
Right. That was the hunting I was doing. I was hunting
Yes.
down another shot and a beer. So,
Right.
and are there destination hunting spots that you've ever wanted to go to? Like my brother, I think, is going to Costa Rica to do some big game fishing,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the sort of the off the.
Right. Cool. No,
Yeah.
there certainly is. At this point, it might be a couple years, and up until recent events, there was a Siberian trip that I wanted to make.
Oh, right. You can wait on that for a second.
I put all plans on hold.
Right, to go into, to Siberia.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a terrible place to get stuck. Talk about living off the land.
There are some tensions right now between the two, between the world and the Russian government. So
Yes, and Siberia would be a terrible place. They're like, oh, he's already there. That's where we keep our dissidents.
Right,
So
right.
that would be very disappointing.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah, I just did this episode about flowers.
Yeah.
And I asked the guest, Barbara, if she had any sort of destination flower places, and she has always wanted to go to Hawaii just because of the exotic sort of.
Course, yeah.
And I wonder, because a lot of Hawaii is national forest.
Yes.
And so I wonder, have you ever been out to, there's a national forest outside of Hot Springs, Arkansas.
I haven't been.
That is one of the most beautiful places I've been on the planet. It's a good looking planet though. So there's a lot of really great looking places.
Yes.
But if you get a chance to go, the town where Andy's dad retired to was called Mount Ida.
Okay.
And he lives, and it's in the middle of this national forest, this
Wow.
weird town. So you could drive to it,
Yeah.
go
Wonderful.
to that tiny town that has like a fake Dairy Queen,
Right.
and then go out to the national forest and then drive the hell out.
Right.
That's
Right.
But I would, it's, I mean, if your kids are sort of formative age, you'd have to
Yes.
wait until they grew up to, unless they also wanted to go on some weird road trip.
Yeah. I'm waiting till they're out of high school, I think, and that's going to be a few years. So, and then I'll
Mhm.
try and buy time with them if they're still interested in hunting, by taking them to interesting places to hunt.
Yeah, you could, it would be fun for everybody, a little destination.
I would hope
You're
so.
like, yeah, that'd be neat. Go
I
to
would hope so.
Colorado or
Yeah. Now you're a dog person? Do you have a dog?
we got a pound dog during the lockdown. And at the pound you have a choice between pit bull mixes and Chihuahua mixes
Yeah.
here in Los Angeles. And I'd never had a dog before. Andy's had lots of dogs.
Yeah.
So we got a Chihuahua mix, and he is a gentleman
Oh,
of
wonderful.
a 8-year-old Gordy. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah.
What kind of dog do you have?
We have a West Siberian Laika.
Laika. How do you spell Laika?
Laika.
Okay.
It's
Is that a hunting
Russian.
dog?
Yeah, translates into barker. And it chases animals up a tree or bays them, which is it just pesters them and barks at them until the hunter comes along.
It's right there. It's right there. That's where it's being
here.
kept.
Why
That's where it's
aren't
being
you here
kept.
yet? I've got it here. Now, it's a crazy dog in that it's just, I should have gone to the pound in LA or wherever and got a Chihuahua mix, but instead I got a very...
Is he a big dog? Is he a big floppy-eared dog?
No, looks kind of like it's a northern Spitz breed, so it looks kind of like a husky. It's a little smaller, a little bit lighter.
Okay.
It's a primitive dog breed, Jackie.
Okay.
That was, so you did a reasonable thing. You said, I'm going to go to the pound and get a dog. And
Right.
what I did was I was reading. I mentioned I read.
You read.
Sometimes.
Mhm.
And I was reading and I was wondering, when people came over, if they came over on the Bering Land Bridge into North America,
Everyone hates to move, but yes.
hunting, did they have dogs by that time, domesticated?
Mm-hmm.
That brought me to primitive dog breeds on the other side of the Bering Land Bridge. That brought me to a Russian zoologist who's been saving these native dog breeds. I woke up a couple months later. I was picking up a crazy Russian hunting dog in Virginia, and it's been challenging ever since. She is wound tight.
How old is she?
5 years old.
Is that what that dog looks like, kind of?
That's what that dog looks like. That's it.
That's it. That is a tall dog. That is a lot of dog.
Picture them barking and trying to kill animals. She has not killed any of my neighbors' cats
Ooh.
to this point.
I had a friend who had a greyhound who bit the leg off of their neighbor's cat. And they...
That's socially awkward.
Yeah, that really ruined that sort of relationship. And they had to get rid of the dog, sadly. But they didn't kill the dog. They just brought the dog back to the greyhound rescue because it was one of those race dogs that they were like, we're going to save a race dog. Right. And I'm like, I'm going to save a Chihuahua.
Well, and the greyhound is a hunting dog. It's a sight hound bred for hunting. That's how they make them race, is they put a fake rabbit in front of them, right?
Yeah, right. So if there's a
sees
cat
a small
running,
animal running,
it's going to run after him and catch him.
After him. Yeah.
And so Andy's dad, the last pile of dogs that he was working with was they were beagles. They were deer chasing beagles.
Yes.
And I mentioned they live right up against this national forest outside of Mount Ida, Arkansas. And in the morning, twice a week, he would just open up the kennels.
Yes.
And the dogs would streak into the woods.
Yes.
And then like 5 or 6 hours later, they would streak back into the kennel. He had gone from training pointers to training these beagles, and he loved them. He loved them so.
Yeah.
And he had one dog, and which was one of the short-haired pointers, and that dog's name was Stinky. Yes. And here's the thing about Stinky. It wasn't being mean. Stinky was a stinky puppy. Yeah. There was absolutely nothing that could be done about Stinky. Stinky was stinky till Stinky died. It's a good dog, Stinky. Sure. But that was not an inside the house dog. Sure. It was actually really hard to pet that dog. Yeah.
You wanted to until you got close.
I did want to. Right. And then I was like, no, you're right.
Yeah.
This dog.
Yeah.
Good dog. Good boy is what I said to Stinky. There you go.
Well, the pointers, you got to control, like, it's such a, it's been described as a dance and an art and everything. And the pointers, it's such a partnership of control and communication between the dog and the handler. And it's a specific thing. With the beagles, it's, you let them out the gate and they run.
And it literally has been bred into them. So I don't know. I don't know who's doing that, but someone else. All right. Well, it's literally been an hour, David. Right. It has gone by pretty fast. I've learned some things about hunting, and I've learned that you really like it. And that is one of my favorite things to learn. So thank you so much for doing the show.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome. Rangers, we're talking with David LaMere here. That's right. You're going to want to, if you want to hear more with him interviewing, tricking people into talking about hunting, go to the Wild Huntsman podcast. Huntsman is spelled Huntsman. You can all spell. I believe in all of you. But the Instagram is the Wild Huntsman podcast. Actually, the word podcast is there too, right?
Yep. Podcast is in there.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show. And Rangers, you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat, my hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?